You might consider your settings. The round is being recorded. Are you okay with that?
Fine. I don't know. Almost anxiety. Boleh lah. Tapi aku boleh tahan 7 minit je lah.
Okay. I call this house to order. My name is Arina. Welcome to round 5 of this year's nationals. On the motion that this house believes that attaining orgasms should not be the primary indicator of good sex, I'd like to call upon the Prime Minister to start off the debate. Yeah. I would also appreciate it if you guys can try and time yourselves.
You're not doing the gender pronouns thing.
Huh?
You're not doing the gender pronouns thing.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah,
Especially in this motion.
So why not? Yeah. So if everyone could just let the audience know if they prefer gender pronouns.
Mark, no preference.
Okay.
No preference.
No preference.
Hi, Chris. No preference.
No preference.
Kana she, and she is
He or they.
He or they?
Witness he.
He. Okay, cool. Sorry, is the ballot really wrong? Or she? Is it okay. Alright, so whenever you're ready.
Madam Speaker, as an individual who is recently in a relationship, I have never been happier to be on the right side of today's motion, right? I'm going to talk to you about 4 things today in my speech. Firstly, how frequent orgasms are an unrealistic, arbitrary standard that we regret that has been perpetuated in today's society. Secondly, I'll tell you how it creates unnecessary pressure for both men and women. Thirdly, I'll tell you how this arbitrary standard affects sexual relationships and why that's bad. And fourthly, because I want to, I'll tell you what good sex is really about, right? So firstly, right, on a standard, on how an unrealistic arbitrary standard is set when we say that orgasms should be the primary indicator of good sex, right? We think, unfortunately, this is a standard that has been perpetuated by pop culture, right? By media such as pornography. We think that when we live in the hypersexualized society that we do, where the idea that sex has to result in orgasm for it to be a successful act, that we think this is a narrative that is primarily being pushed by, firstly, pornography. Secondly, we think it's being pushed by pharmaceutical companies that sell things like Viagra. Is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it preys on the insecurity of men and women alike, right? We think that, firstly, it's important to establish that biologically, we are all constituted differently, which is a fancy way of saying not everyone comes the same way, right? We think that sex is a highly subjective experience, right? As much as it is a physical outcome, it's also a deeply emotional connection that you may share with your partner. Also, to an extent of saying that it is a spiritual connection that you may share with your partner, right? I think the standard that's been perpetuated is incredibly harmful for the following reasons. On to my second point, right? How it creates unnecessary pressure for both men and women. Let's talk about the women first, actually, right? We think that many women, ultimately, when they are unable to achieve an orgasm, they are, well, sometimes embarrassed, right? To not have orgasm despite having relatively good sex, right? It creates an awkward situation where they ultimately have to explain or reassure her partner that, well, you were really good in bed. It's just that I didn't feel like coming tonight, and therefore the sex was great. Unfortunately, it did not result in the orgasm. We think this conversation happens all too often when it comes to sexual relationships, and we regret that is the conversation that couples have to undergo when the process of orgasm is not achieved, right? But how does it pressure men, right? We think it lowers self-esteem for men who sometimes are unable to perform for various reasons, such as health, such as age, right? We think that bringing a woman to climax does require a physical exertion and to some degree a technical effort, right? So when an orgasm doesn't happen, he is deemed to have failed. He feels worse about himself. He feels alienated from his friends because they can't talk to him about it, because we live in a society where masculinity and dominance has become the arbitrary standard that we have set for men. He also withdraws further from his partner because he feels unable to satisfy her, and he feels worse about himself. Even more problematic, we see that many men actually turn to things like substance abuse in order to enhance the sexual relation, in order to feel better about himself, right? Things such as alcohol to lower inhibition, Viagra to last longer, and drugs to enhance the experience, right? We think it's problematic to tie your self-worth to an externality, and one as such triviality such as orgasming, right? I think the act of orgasm should not dictate how good of a lover you are. We think that you should not be judged by the arbitrary standard, and subsequently we think that you should not judge other people by that standard as well. We think that it has created extreme pressures and unnecessary pressures for both men and women to achieve this incredibly subjective experience. Before I move on to my third point, how we affect sexual relationships. Anybody?
Considering that not all sexual relationships are, let's say, directly involved into romantic partnerships, how exactly are you going to have any form of indicator if you do not have any form of bond with that person instead?
No, the indicator is if you enjoyed yourself. Sex is ultimately a pleasurable act. Just because you didn't climax does not mean you didn't enjoy yourself. It is incredibly problematic when you come out of a sexual experience, even a casual one, and say that, well, I didn't climax, so I don't feel very good about myself. I don't think he or she was a particularly good partner because he didn't make me orgasm. But that defeats the purpose of sex itself. We think that when you have a good experience, you have a good experience, right? It should not be determined on whether a climax occurred or not. But why does this affect sexual relationships between men and women, right? I think it's problematic to judge a sexual relationship based on a single, or if you're really good, multiple instances of orgasms, right? We think sex can also be equally enjoyable even without orgasm, right? We think it's incredibly problematic when we see that men and women start judging and measuring their partner's ability to have sex based on how often they're able to make each other or one another climax, right? I think that this happens in a way that men and women are unable, or men and women are all constitutionally different, right? Like compared to my partner Sadiq, compared to everyone else in this room, has different pleasure spots or different ways that we can be pleasured, and subsequently the women or men that we end up with have different conceptions of what it means to have good sex as well. We think that all of that is thrown out the window the moment you start measuring your sexual experience based on that single instance, right? We think that when orgasms happen less, right, this sometimes happens due to age, it happens sometimes being due to health reasons, or being like normalized with a consistent sexual partner who you love. But we think that when men start blaming women for not being able to satisfy them, women start blaming men for the same reason, we think that it leads to worse outcomes, right? We think this has led to things like infidelity, right? Trying to chase that sexual high, trying to chase that sexual climax, which may be an arbitrary standard, which may not actually exist, right? We think this has destroyed relationships that I would otherwise have functioned perfectly fine without the notion of climax. We think it has destroyed families when men or women leave their spouses and cheat on another individual. We do not agree with these outcomes, and we think that it was based on something so frivolous that we're not willing to defend that. And lastly, so what is good sex, right? Sex occurs on many layers. I already told you about the physical, emotional, and spiritual layer, right? But sex is more than just the physical aspect. And even in the physical aspect, it's more than just the climax, right? I think that sex functions on the basis of intimacy. It functions on the basis of respect to your partner. And it also functions, more importantly, on like things like affirmative consent, right? Things that we discuss about debates all the time, right? It's a selfless act of giving, right? And we think that joining two bodies as one is incredibly personal, intimate, and relative experience. And we do not think that it should be arbitrarily defined as whether or not that person had an orgasm or not, right? I think that sex should be enjoyable, and that I think is the most important takeaway that you should take from this speech. Sex needs to be enjoyable, right? The moment it becomes a chore, the moment it becomes a burden, the moment it becomes an exercise in establishing your dominance or proving your self-worth in order to make your partner climax, that is the point at which we say sex no longer becomes enjoyable, sex becomes a chore, sex becomes a burden, sex becomes something that we not enjoy anymore. Proud to propose.
Yeah. Right, that's kind of the speaker for a speech. Now, the solid case from the opposition. Then, I'd like to invite the opposition.
Okay. Guys, can I borrow your timer? Madam, there are two things in this world that you can enjoy even though you suck at it. First being debating, although anyone can also enjoy it regardless of what your skill level is, and also sex to a certain extent. But that doesn't mean that we also put, well, standards of what we do not think is then good at the end of the day. Obviously, any other debater out there, although you may enjoy the debating at this level that you might necessarily have, means that you also wish to seek a further level that you can also reach. The same goes, Madam Chair, for things such as sex, where you have a biological trigger that can trigger within your mind in telling you that what you have then reached is a sense of accomplishment that anyone else can. Having said that, I wish I have won nationals. So let's have some certain rebuttals to talk about when it comes to side opening up with, right? Because they wanted to tell us that they understood sex, and also, you know, there is no arbitrary line as to what exactly sex is. No, by the way, that's not necessarily true, right? So first things first, does sex really have to come with intimacy at the end of the day? Because, well, Mark said from his speech that you needed to have feelings and you needed to have this sense of bonding when it comes to sex necessarily, without necessarily showing us the delineation between what exactly sex actually is, when it comes with certain, you know, illustrations of what lust actually is, with things such as love, where people want to bond with each other necessarily. From the side of opening opposition itself, Madam Chair, we will tell you that sex is about what that person also feels on a sexual level, and you do not have to feel romantic feelings in order for that sex to self-actualize to a higher level at the end of the day. Romantic feelings already do may to a certain extent mean that it is good sex at the end of the day. But not everyone within this house or not everyone in this world has sex for that feeling of a romantic pleasure to also self-actualize, but everybody in this world has sex for that sexual pleasure at the end of the day. The second thing we have to deal with is this idea of them feeling judged, therefore you want to take certain substances on their side of the house. We tell you that being judged happens anyway, Madam Chair, but also it is not that bad on the other side of the house. But why necessarily? Because when you have a certain trigger or a goal that people can work towards, that means that people also understand that it is part of reaching an orgasm that becomes an objective that you want to reach at the end of sex. Their side of the house never told us what kind of metric they wanted to have under that side. Because we told you on the our side of the house that it is the best metric in order for you to understand or also comprehend whether or not you're having good sex is to know whether or not both individuals are also having an orgasm at the same time. Mark has to tell me why cuddling in bed for 2 hours right after sex is probably a good thing for him. But also Mark at the same time will also have to tell me why it is so good that he felt a sense of romantic relationship with his partner for it to also become a metric of good sex. Then we will tell you a tangible outcome on the side of opening opposition in telling you that a biological trigger of orgasms can then bring you about a sense of objective that people can reach when it comes to sex. What is this debate then not about? We don't think it's about whoever and which team can win by making the most amount of sexual references, Madam Chair, within 7 minutes. Ironically, we think this debate is also not about people who cannot reach their orgasm necessarily. It's very unfortunate, sure, but the debate has to come to a balance where a lot of people within status quo are able to reach a certain point of orgasm as long as you can can try to work towards it. What is debate also then about? It's about what is the best indicator for a person or a couple to know whether or not the sex that they're having is then good. The side of opening observation will tell you that it's not just about whether or not that person feels good about themselves, but also if that couple as a whole will also then feel good. The burden is simple, that if we can prove to you why reaching orgasms is then the best metric, then we then win the debate, because it is the most measurable metric that we brought to you, opening up and didn't bring a metric. First argument, what exactly is then sex? Sex is one thing, Madam Chair. Sex and orgasms are obtained when there is a great sense of stimulation within your body, and there's a great sense of achievement inside, right? And you feel this certain rush of pleasure that goes within you, that give you this biological peak of your body, telling you that you're necessarily having a good time. Your body biologically shows this, and you can feel it through a rush of blood that happens in your brain, a body tensing at the current given time, a surge in endorphins, and men making a cum face at the current given time. For example, like such as feeling ejaculation. Right? And also sometimes women probably moan louder as a sense of that peak. When there are these two indicators that happen within sex in itself, within that these bodies then tell you that you are enjoying the kind of time that you're having, because there is a reaction that then triggers within you that tangibly sends signals or neurons to the brain that you are also reaching a peak of your then sex. No, thank you. But secondly, Madam Chair, other indicators are extremely subjective under their side of the house, and it creates a vague sense of direction that people are not able to achieve together when it comes to having sex. So yes, Mark might argue that 2 minutes of his sex will probably be good for him, even though there is no orgasm there. But there's a biological threshold that I'm very sure you can reach if you try to do your best to then reach that. What are the yardsticks what are the other yardsticks that they have to then also prove they really wanted to? There's some form of embrace that they wanted to say when it comes to romantic feelings, means a greater connection to the person, and somehow that's good sex. But they also have to prove to us why lust is also very different from sex. We tell you that they can't be measured, and all these things that Mark talked about can also exist outside of sex. When you have other indicators for your relationship, Madam Chair, sex goes beyond that and overlooks whether or not your relationship comes first, or whether you also feel your pleasure at the end of the day. The conclusion for this is simple. No, thank you. That for a metric that is tangible for two people to then, know whether or not the sex they're having is good, we think that this indicator can then be a biological reaction of then an orgasm. Before my second argument, sure.
Wait, we never told you what the metric for good sex is intentionally, because it doesn't exist, right? But however, we do need to include the people who can't achieve orgasm, even if they try, and what the impacts on having orgasm as a primary sexual feeling does to their self-esteem.
Look, okay, on the contrast, I'll tell you why exactly then having a metric as to why good sex is good for people to also then experience. So why are orgasms important to be used as an indicator? A, we think that orgasm as an indicator can then be something that people and individuals can then work towards and treat it as a skill that can be honed and to work to become perfect. For example, Madam Chair, a man probably needs to learn where the clitoris is, or needs to know where the G-spot is for him to fully allow his partner to then feel the kind of pleasure that she then needs to have. But a woman at the same time can also treat her sexual actions as a skill that she can work towards, for example. So this also ends to a point, Madam Chair, where we tell you that if two couples have a tension within themselves, we think that you can still achieve a great orgasm. That means that you can still achieve that sense of sexual pleasure without the feelings of romantic being there. But secondly, Madam Chair, we posit you that it enhances good sex for certain individuals to no longer have plausible deniability to say, I had good sex but my other partner did not. And here's where we also protect couples. Because when you hear a lot of references when it comes to high school boys only lasting about 7 minutes, not just in their speeches, Madam Chair, that also means one thing. That it means that they also think that it is very important for only one part of the couple to achieve an orgasm, and they don't work towards the other person reaching an orgasm. At that point, Madam Chair, we tell you that lazy sex is then not good sex, because you're not allowing your other partner of that gender or sex to also achieve that kind of maximum sexual pleasure. We fight for that other person in the couple. We also fight for people who have orgasms, have a good time.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much. You continue the case of the government that comply with the practice.
Oh my God, Mokris. Sex is not sport that you get a trophy after when you win, when you're comparing with debate, because eventually we are all fighting for that 10,000 ringgit in this tournament. You are not doing that when you're having sex, Mr. Speaker, and that is the huge difference that comes with that. But rather, the only trophy they might likely get from their side of the house, if you are to put this metric of orgasm in place, is the pressure that Mark already told you in his 7th-minute speech, like that it imposes on both partners in society, and how this even drives people to push to extreme measures just to satisfy that partner. This is the kind of metric they want to, like, these individuals succumb to based on the perception of the popular culture Mark talked about, that the society has set, the standard the society has set on sex, which is something that is problematic, and this is something we recognize from our side of the house. They never engage with that whatsoever from their side of the house, and for all those reasons, I think Terence, you have a huge job to do from your side of the house, right? First response, right? Like, sex is what a person feels, like what you feel from sex. But that is the problem, right? It's no more what you feel about sex. It's what society wants you to feel about sex. That is what is happening right now, Mr. Speaker. The standard of sex decades ago is way different from what it is right now, based on the popular culture that exists in society right now. And this is the problem we recognize from our side of the house. And the harms of this problem is what we see as abhorrent from our side of the house and should be tackled with and should be dealt with. They never did anything on that. But then, like, the only thing, like, having YASI is the measure to set the goals for individual. But then what kind of goals are you setting it? Like, at the end of the day, before I can satisfy my partner, I have to use like shitloads of my Viagra, do cocaine, or like do drugs and stuff just to satisfy my partner, which is a dangerous tempo at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, these individuals they want to talk about even lose their self-esteem, because without these products in the first place, Mr. Speaker, then they cannot perform in any way, which means that these individuals, when they are normal, they don't have the kind of confidence they are gonna get from our side of the house, Mr. Speaker. But then what have we pushed to you in comparative to that, Mr. Speaker? Because we told you this experience is something that's subjective, Mr. Speaker, due to individual problems. But the standard at which is raised is something we don't like succumb to from our side of the house, because this is something that is dangerous. Because now, if I was a guy that used to be satisfied like years ago based on like a girl touching my hair or finding my G-spot, it's no more the standard for me now anymore, because all I want now is like to make a girl reach grammar. Is the only like experience I can gain from their side of the house, which is something that has no kind of positive outcome from their side of the house. But then now they want to talk about like biological trigger and then the kind of experience, Mr. Speaker. Like, it's just like a 2-minute experience, like orgasm that even gives. But then, like, even reaching this orgasm is a standard that has been extended by the society, what society has portrayed, Mr. Speaker. Because what used to satisfy you before is no more satisfying you because of the kind of things you see in pornography, Mr. Speaker. We even see cases like this where female, like, ladies are pressured to succumb to abstinence when they have like even aggressive partner and engage in such as BDSM because of the pressure they go through. And these are the kind of things that has like separated relationship, Mr. Speaker. Like, now you have to go seek for alternative elsewhere or something before you are satisfied. That has like literally separated you from the kind of relationship we have. But then what if it's not even like a relationship that has emotional attachment? We think even in hookup culture, when you just want to have casual sex, the metric is still very high, Mr. Speaker. The fact that you still have to depend on Viagra before you can satisfy even the girl you want to have like some kind of like sport engagement with from their side of the house is something that is abhorrent, like, Mr. Speaker, because like it or not, all the kind of self-esteem they want to talk about from their side of the house is something that will never happen, because it's only dependent based on the illusion of the kind of content you portray while you're being engaged in that act, Mr. Speaker. All those things are wrong, Mr. Speaker. But then, like, a new analysis to what, like, Mark has told you, which they never engaged in, Mr. Speaker, like how this is harmful and what, like, the kind of vested interest that exists. Okay, before I go into that, yeah.
This is not about what society wants to impose towards people, but what 2 individuals, or maybe 3, may understand what is the metric of what they should work towards. Can sex be only one partner reaching the orgasm and the other one left hanging?
I bet today, like, Mukris, if you have like some kind of sexual talk with like your partner Terence, like he was saying, like last night I just had 1 hour of sex and stuff like that, you feel kind of challenged on your side of the house. Oh my God, I need to beat this. These are the kind of problems you have on your side of the house. These are the kind of yardstick you're setting for yourself. This is like very unrealistic from your side of the house, Mukris. That's very problematic. Please, you have your chance. So moving on, like, so what are actually the problem of the outcomes, like these things that led society to, Mr. Speaker? Firstly, we can see, like, in case what's going on in status quo right now these days, where even individuals don't feel like no other kind of partner can satisfy them. A clear example is like the kind of things that is existing in Japan, and even the prominent rise in sex toys and things like that. Because individuals don't feel like the only thing that can satisfy me right now is like me just satisfying myself, because that's the only way I can reach orgasm, and that's the expectation individuals expect when they're having sex. Right? We see how this has even disintegrated society from having the kind of like a balanced relationship they should be having in society on our side of the house that have been drifted from their side of the house. And this is quite dangerous, because now, like, okay, we can just say like Japan suffering from underpopulation and stuff like that, but that's not even the problem, right? But then the kind of like social pitch it builds itself in society is what is problematic here, Mr. Speaker, and something that should not be allowed to stand in society, all because of the unrealistic, arbitrary standards that the popular culture has set in society today, Mr. Speaker. But then what have we told you overall, Mr. Speaker? Because like Mark has told you how this has created some arbitrary or illusion like standards when it comes to metric of measuring sex, and how this has led to like imposing a lot of pressure on like men and women based on partnership, on how that is extended to harming even relationship, if we are to talk about that, Mr. Speaker, and how the whole outcome of this motion itself is very problematic and something that should not allow to stand, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the only house that understands what sex should be and how it differs from what society thinks sex should be, Mr. Speaker, side with opening up.
Remember, you're nicely before we were.
Dr. Varun is going to kill me. Madam Chair, it is rounds like this is the reason why we have equity committees in the first place. Now, this debate is not about what society wants or what society imposes, but it's about the definition of what you can indicate is a good sex, and what you can tell to your partner that how do you feel towards the end. So all of whatever vague notions that you want to talk about, some sense of belonging, some sense of intimacy, can also be achieved when you have a direct indicator that both parties can agree on. And that's some point of what it needs to be within a sexual relationship. There are several questions that I need to answer in this debate, and my rebuttals will be integrated in this. That firstly, how sex is to fulfill lust, but not other subjective needs they want to talk about. Firstly, when you search for sex, and to an extent, because of your biological needs, that's where the constant search of sexual high would always be there, regardless of what you want to impose. That means even though the rest of the world may think that intimacy is the yardstick, but your body, regardless, would look for that sexual high instead. That's why you need this indicator in order for you to know what exactly how exactly you can reach the sexual high that pushes your biological function to set. They mentioned to us that pop culture puts an unfair burden on people because it creates this unrealistic barrier. First of all, we contest this by saying that pop culture is a form of reflection of what society wants, on what do they mean is an indication of a good time at that point. There's a reason why even within pornography, you still see the women moan, because that is a direct reflection of what it means to be an indication that you have achieved the peak of what it means to have sex. That means that you already achieved that, how the blood rushes through your head, and this is the result out of it. So regardless of both sides, even though you want to impose the yardstick, people would still look for it because the biology needs it so we just need to admit what happens at the end of the day. Then the second part that they argued is that somehow you will look for multiple sexual partners in the future.
Firstly, it is not an absolute wrong if you want to look for multiple sexual partners in order to achieve this high. This is good because it shows that a person should not cow down to by certain actions that other people impose to them on what exactly is a good time, but you have your own inclinations on how exactly you feel as a person when you have sexual relations. If you achieve orgasm and that's the biological high that you have, that means if you were to look for other sexual partners, not only you are able to find people who can actually understand your biological needs, but also at the same time that you can actually try to see what are the comparisons, how you feel when you sleep with other people who also use different techniques or different ways within life. So you can actually compare, and you can compare between two people and see who exactly you can relate the most to at the end of the day. The second level to this is that you have to understand that sex, the existence of it, is to fulfill some sense of lust within the body. So if you want to achieve other things, let's say some form of intimacy or some form of this form of embrace between the two bodies, that can exist independent of sex itself. That can exist within romantic partnerships. So whatever axis you want to post creates the idea of sex being moot and no longer relevant in this debate. The third thing that the question is that how it affects the confidence of other people, because somehow a person being good at something may make other people question about the abilities. We agree that somehow it is a skill set that some people may do feel left out of it, and some people may take Viagra to compensate. But it shows it's a good thing because it shows that you want to improve on a certain skill set in order for your other partner can also feel the same form of high as you at the same time. So it does not break up, relationships and whatever they want to say, but it creates this mutual feeling that both sides are working towards each other in order to understand the other person's body on how to actually achieve a good time between both. Because the problem here is that if the end of the day, the sex normally ends when one person probably come or ejaculate regardless. So that means one person will have some sense of orgasm. The problem here is that if you do not put orgasm as the indicator, only one person would feel that sense of enjoyment or that biological high. If you put orgasm as the indicator, both parties are forced to do so. So it may affect the confidence of other people, but it pushes them. Just like how when you don't feel confident up against another debater, you may push your skill set in order to compete to be a better debater instead. So on both sides, the conclusion here is that everyone works together in order to achieve something rather than just be mediocre and not have good sex out there. Before I move on, yes, Mark.
Okay, if both partners are present, but let's say the woman and drug use, leaving the man feeling used to, leaving the man feeling vulnerable, would you still say that was good sex?
I would say good sex is when both parties get this orgasm. That's the point of the argument I made just now, where people use that as indicators on what exactly is good sex. If one person does not achieve orgasm, then it defeats the point of what opposition talks about, because the debate is about using orgasm as an indicator. Read the motion. Second level to this, how it forces sexual partners to respect each other. Like I said earlier on, regardless of whatever forms of sex you want to have in the future, it ends when one of them actually achieves some form of orgasm, but rarely it ends on both sides instead. So you need an indicator what calls to the end set. All of the other yardsticks are subjective and can be dealt with plausible deniability. Let's say, for example, if you are a man, using his scenario again, and somehow you ejaculated very early on within your sexual relationship, that means you no longer have the incentive to continue your sexual acts when orgasm is not an indicator whether that woman enjoys it or not. You can always claim other subjective indicators. Let's say your presence is enough to cater to your affection. Hugging or cuddling while you are naked instead gives some ground to actually say that you have already given some form of affection to that person. So you do not respect what that person wants, despite her biological needs really are. The problem here is that when you actually go for sex, that's where you sacrifice something. You sacrifice your sense of privacy, your sense of intimacy to another person. So there needs to be some form of trade-off. If a person were to not actually achieve something of an indicator when they have sex, that means you lose some sense of pride within yourself because you actually sacrifice the process within it, and throughout that you don't achieve anything. That means you have no incentive to be part of that sexual relationship in the future. But the conclusion here is simple, is that when you allow people the plausible deniability of all the subjective indicators they mentioned about, that's where one person would not respect the other person, because you don't strive for, you don't look for how exactly that person can achieve orgasm at the end of the day. So there's some form of disrespect and a symmetry of power where the man who controls what the women want instead. So the conclusion here, if both parties work towards orgasm, they are more likely to respect each other's wants and needs, especially when it's already a biological need, and they are biological indicators that OG refuses to acknowledge. That's basic biology and nature.
Thank you very much. Start the case from the OG bench to invite member of the
Madam Chair, sorry. Madam Chair, we've reached the climax of the debate. One rebuttals and the rest will be integrated in my speech. PsychGov has always focused on the body has a natural inclination towards sexual orgasm. No matter what, there will always be that sort of natural search for it. We argue to you that not everyone has that. Like Psych OG has already said that, everybody is built differently, and orgasm may never be a priority. So what that does is that sort of generalization that Psych-Op is pushing is forcing people to pander to what society is forcing upon these people. We think that this is generally harmful. So 3 points I'm going to talk about. First, I'm going to talk about the exploration of sex, personality, and emotions. Then I'm going to talk to you about the unfair expectations of certain racial groups. Then I'm going to talk to you about degradation of self-worth within a relationship. But before that, let's talk about choice. Psych-Op also talked about improving skill set, how this sort of generalization pushes them to buy Viagra, pushes them to improve their technicalities and try to achieve that sort of utopia that they so love to talk about. But we think that this forces the choice away from people's hand, because not everybody necessarily wants to have an orgasm. Some people are in it for the sex, for the sort of intimacy that general social interaction or cuddling doesn't give you. We think that sex then becomes a very intimate, subjective experience. The moment you impose orgasm into a certain people's life, even if it's done through the hypersexualization of society, even if they're doing it via porn or whatever, we think that the moment the sort of imposition is done into certain couples or certain pockets of society, we think that that will become harmful because you're taking choice away from them. Then the next level is where do I then put my self-worth, right? Because when a woman or man's inability to orgasm makes her feel more inferior, him or her more inferior to his partner, we think that even if she can't orgasm, she should be able to have that emotional freedom or emotional security to enjoy the whole process. Even if she doesn't want that orgasm, that sort of pandering and imposition upon her or him will force her to think about it. Okay, why am I not having that orgasm? Why don't I want to have an orgasm? Am I a freak of nature? This sort of thoughts is extremely harmful, and we think that if society keeps on pandering into a certain absolute, we think that it's extremely unfair for all these couples. See, even if the priority of good sex wasn't there, what Op's definition of an orgasm will force them to think about what the definition of good sex is. See, then the whole mental calculus change. Sex will never be enjoyable. Sex is always achieving that angle. Even if you're physically unable to achieve that angle, then you're pushing them away. You're segregating them. You're isolating them. We think that then this creates social anxiety. We think that sex is an important part of every human being life, whether you're gay, transsexual, or whatever, that every man and woman should be able to enjoy sex. But what we don't agree is what sort of standards you impose onto sex, because sex is an extremely personal thing. Whether you achieve orgasm or not is a choice. We think that the choice should remain within your hand. We think that it is unfair for anyone to tell you how you should feel about orgasm, what certain blood veins should open and what sort of mental chemicals should be flooding your brain, orgasm. We think that sex is up to you and how you pander to it is your individual choice. Do not take that away opposition. Before that, yes.
Now, let's put an analogy here. If somebody else were to give some greater sense of affection romantically to your plausible partner, then should then the world strive to be affectionate because you in the process felt inadequate to the other person?
No, we think that then it is up to the partner to choose what sort of sexual actualization they want. We think that when you allow op definition to come into play, then the sort of sexual definition, the sort of sexual actualization, then is only limited to a certain scope. We think that this is necessarily harmful for relationship. Not only that, we think that this is necessarily harmful for the psychology and physiology of an individual human being. Let's talk about social anxiety. How does this then harm their life? Because society has an absolute standard on what sex is. Remember, society is liberal in your sexuality, society is really liberal on a lot of things, and then society then comes to you and say, you know what, to be a successful human being, you gotta have orgasm, or you gotta give orgasm, or you gotta do both. We think that this nuance doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. If Terence wants to have orgasm, so be it. That's sexual actualization. But if Kish wants to wine, Netflix and chill, but to a certain extent, just want to have a good bubble time in the bathtub, we think that that is his sexual actualization. We think we need to respect all sorts of sexual actualization. Next, I'm going to talk about the unfair expectations of certain racial groups, right? People come in different sizes, and some of them are excellent in providing orgasm. But besides that, there is an overarching focus on orgasm within the porn industry that sets this sort of unfair expectations. How is this harmful? When porn star says, I want a big dick so I can reach orgasm, it sets an unfair stereotype because there will be only a certain methodological to reach, that certain absolute definition. We think that this then effectively creates a sort of stereotypes upon other races. You're not going to see which races, equity. But they make it like, these individuals are not worthy of any sexual relationship. We think that this is necessarily harmful because it creates a sort of image. One of the effects of having an absolute definition, that it creates a sort of image that that in the end, no matter what you do, that this should be your life goal. Because ultimately, in life, good sex is important. We think that the focus has shifted away from their ability to enjoy, to understand themselves, and to provide joy through other means into just plain orgasm. Yes, we agree. To some, orgasm is amazing, but we think that to some, there are other means of enjoying as well. And we need to respect that mean. We need to understand their feelings and we need to validate their feelings. Giving an absolute definition invalidate them, their feelings, and in the process invalidate them. Lastly, let's talk about the exploration of sex, personality, and emotion. Hypersexualization of society then limits the definition of good sex, yada yada yada, but it will then suppress the natural curiosity of any human being. Because right now, my angle is such, there is a certain methodology. There is no other incentive for me to then explore the plethora of ways, tantric sex or whatever sex, to understand what sort of body I have, to understand what makes me happy. Orgasm doesn't necessarily make me happy, it makes society happy, the majority of society. But is society's pandering the truth? We think that that truth needs to be found out, and we think that having a subjective definition is always better. Thank you.
And the speaker for his speech to continue to face on the opposition bench, like to invite a number of oppositions.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm live stream. It means I can't make sex.
Yeah,
But if anything happens, you handle. If you're okay with it.
Madam Chair, I hope that my speech is the climax of today's debate. Being Rafiq's girlfriend, I think I know who better understands what a good time really is like. Just a few clarification. Viagra is not to aid in coming, but it's for erectile dysfunction. I don't think I can trust people that can't differentiate these two things to talk about sex. But before that, a few clarification. Side government wants to talk about stereotypes, that there's stereotypes within sex, and we think that that's very harmful. But side closing, government don't think that it is right. Stereotypes exist in different ways. There are racial stereotypes, like you stereotype Chinese people to be businessmen, or you stereotype Indians to rob a bank. But we don't think that there's a harm. Why? Because we still find ways to exist with each other in society. Right? No, that's not an equity violation. That's the truth. Stereotypes exist, and we don't think that's harmful within sex. But secondly, we don't. Government said that they are the only one that understand what sex is really about. I completely disagree because they failed to reach the peak of explanation on what really good sex is about and what is the measurement of sex. We are the only side that actually provide to you what form of the yardstick. Even if sex is a process of subjectivity, there is still a measurement of what we want. Because biologically, it's a human nature to want to reach orgasm, and that is what I'm going to talk to you today in this debate. Firstly, this debate is who proves whether orgasms is the primary indication of what orgasms is. All forms of attributes to sex, like emotional connection, the quality of sex, the skills of your partner, and the natural and physical connections are all contributors to orgasms. Yes, we agree that orgasms are the primary indicators, but we do not argue to the extent that it's the only indicators of sex. But we think that orgasm as a primary indicator and all these attributes that contribute to that materialize when you orgasm. We don't think that that's a harm. We think that the end goal of good sex is not to only attain pleasure, but more importantly, orgasm. We have to concede, as much as governments wants to argue that orgasm shouldn't be a primary indication of good sex, but it is in human nature, and it's innate within us, the biological responses that we can't ignore. Therefore, we think that orgasm should be the primary indication of what good sex is really about. Two things I'll talk to you today, right? Firstly, of what other factors that contribute to good sex manifest and materialize in the terms of orgasm. And that level also explains how we facilitate the special bonding between humans, sit down. And lastly, what are the practical benefits of orgasm? But before that, a few rebuttals, right? Look, they would have talked about how we want, because of the primary indication of what sex is, therefore you help exploration of sex. We don't think so, right? Because it's always innate in us to want to reach that form of orgasm. And because humans want to reach that form of angle, partners will always find ways to explore, to reach the goal of orgasm. There's always form of exploration between two partners to say, hey, we think that orgasm is very important to us. Therefore, we need to find ways to explore. Maybe explore having sex in different places or having sex in different types of position. I think exploration works better and is more beneficial under our side. Secondly, they talk about how the idea of orgasms within society will lead to degradation of self-worth. Even if certain couples don't subject themselves to this form of indication or this form of yardstick that sit down, that this yardstick orgasm is the measurement of good sex. We think that people on the ground still be able to self-actualize what good sex is. Even if there's some form of yardstick, we don't think that that's harmful if couples or people choose to self-actualize that even if I don't have orgasm, I don't think it's a degradation of my self-worth. We don't think that harm exists outside opening government. It's a harm too big to prove, right? But lastly, they said that orgasm is not what we want, orgasm is what society wants. Look, everybody wants orgasm. Everybody wants to reach the peak or achieve some form of peak in their relation, in their sexual exploration. We don't think even if society don't impose any form of indication of orgasm should be the primary indicator, it's already innate in us and it's a biological response that we would want to have orgasm. Therefore, we don't think it's a society measurement. This debate has to happen on the level of individual. Open.
What makes it is that the way this sex, right? Is it the fact that a partner has to be on substance to keep going, or the fact that the other partner has to even pay for orgasm to get the other partner to stop? Are we not just lying to each other? Have we achieved anything?
No, we don't think so. We think that even if both sides if one person self-actualized that orgasm is a primary indicator of sex, we think that's okay. If your another partner thinks that, oh, I've already reached a peak, even if I reach a peak of mental connection with you and I'm not orgasm, we don't think that's harmful because people are able to self-actualize the form of. Firstly, why other factors contribute to good sex materialize in the form of orgasm, right? You need to understand what leads to orgasm in the first place. Because they say when they want to talk about good sex, but never actually talk about what are the indications of good sex. Right? When two persons have an intercourse or procreate, there is form of connections in several levels, mentally, emotionally, and physically. But this will manifest into something else. Not only it brings people closer and facilitate the bonding between people, but it always materializes within orgasm. Even if it's not orgasm, it materializes within that form of connection, and that connection will manifest into orgasm. Therefore, you need to take into account that all these other factors and all these criterions of what real sex is, what opening garment is talked about, all actually materialize in some form of orgasm. Therefore, the indicator, even if society don't impose, I've already taken one, even if society don't impose that form of measurement, that will still be the end goal of couples. But lastly, what are the practical benefits of orgasms? You need to understand the reason why biologically and it's innate in us, because we recognize that there are some of practical benefits of orgasm, like how when one's orgasm, it releases brain chemicals like hormone of oxytocin or endorphins, right? This may sound funny, but athletes and corporate staffs actually use this before an event to release too much of a testosterone within its body. Athletes actually have sex or to masturbate to release to orgasm so that they will perform better the next day. Or when corporate staffs have meetings and feel nervous, they will have sex or masturbate so that they will release that form of stress. Because all these chemicals that is built up within your brain, because your orgasm actually helps you with relaxation. And we think that is also a good indication of what sex is. There needs to be an explanation of how orgasm is beneficial in the first place. That's why it's innate within us that we find that naturally we think that this is the primary indication of what good sex is, which is orgasm. And therefore we're very happy to propose.
Speaker for speech, for the speaker of the government, back to invite
Madam Chair, the biggest problem with today's debate is side opposition's blatant desire to want to set certain degrees of standards as to what sex is about and as to what good sex is about. Their desperation into wanting to define what sex is about clearly showcases their grave desire to want to set standards. And we are here to tell you that sex isn't exactly about standards at the end of the day. Sex is a journey. It's not entirely an end goal, as side opening opposition wanted to talk to you about. Sex is about people defining what it is for themselves without pandering to any form of sets of influences that comes from within society. But the point is, the problem with sex is because of the fact that it's largely very intimate and it's largely not very discussed a lot on public domain. At the end of the day, so much so that when people want to know a lot more about sex, or they want to derive their understanding of what sex is about, or form their conception of what sex is about, their ability to source for information depends on what's accessible within society's perception of what sex is. And that is where the debate is about, because at the end of the day, this is also about the very fact that people's definition of what sex is dependent on how they pander to what exists within society. The very fact is, when you have porn stars telling that I won, like as Vignesh spoke to you, when in porn you have the overemphasis on the need to reach orgasm. Most of the porn videos out there depict at the end of the porn video where either the lady or the man reaches a certain degree of climax. And that particular form of sexual relationship
is then forcing people on the ground to pander, including those who aren't exactly able to reach orgasms, who are not exceptionally good at sort of reaching orgasm or providing orgasm. They are also forced to pander to these forms of paradigm as well, everything that is necessarily harmful. I'm going to talk to you about one very large clash in general. What exactly is sex, and is it fair to set standards for sex at the end of the day? But before that, a few rebuttals that won't necessarily fit into my arguments. Please sit down. Because the very fact that Ali spoke to you about the idea of how there's no harm to stereotype in any way clearly depicts the danger that they're propagating from side closing opposition. Because Victor specifically mentioned to you how this will set a certain degree of racial stereotype, and what this does in terms of degrading the self-worth of those individuals within those racial groups in general, Madam Chair. Because like it or not, as much as we love to propagate equality and treat everyone equally, the important thing about understanding equality is that it's at certain points in time we need to understand the differences that exist between different groups of people and the sort of biological differences as well. So the fact of the matter is, different people come in different sizes, like it or not. At the end of the day, the society's perception of what orgasm is prioritizes or benefits one particular race, particularly if you look at porn in general, where there's always been an overemphasis on having, say, for example, big penis sizes, because they propagate this misconception that only big penis sizes are capable of providing orgasm, or that orgasm is the end goal of every sex at the end of the day. So that creates a misconception that certain racial groups, for example, who perhaps in terms of biologically are disadvantaged in this sense, probably feel that they are not worth enough for the concept of sex, or for the practice of sex at the end of the day. Because if sex is all about orgasm and they are unable to provide orgasm, then what exactly is sex to them at the end of the day? And this sort of misconception then creates the degradation of self-worth within those individuals, something that I'll talk about more in my speech later on. Please sit down. What exactly is sex? We tell you that sex isn't only about orgasm. It's not a competition. It's not an end goal. It's flexible. It's vague. It's up to each and every individual to define for what himself. So we're fine if some individuals feel that orgasm is perhaps their end goal, or orgasm is perhaps what they like about sex. But we also find if some other individuals think otherwise. The reason why we feel the prioritization of orgasm is harmful is because it does not allow other individuals to make a choice. Victor spoke to you about the absence of choice and what it does to the self-worth of an individual. When sex is such a taboo topic in society in general to a large extent, when people's perception of sex is influenced by what the society thinks in general, then the presence of choice doesn't really exist in this scenario, because they don't exactly have the ability to decide what sex is for them. Everything that's particularly harmful, everything that at the end of the day, Victor also spoke to you about the importance of understanding who you are and exploring yourself in general to find out the dynamics of what you are as an individual in terms of being so I don't know, something like being, whether you're in favor of dominating or whatever not. But in the absence of choice, your inability to explore yourself is significantly harmful as well, because it creates this one-dimensional outlook of who you are within a sexual relationship alone. And if you're not able to provide orgasm, then your worth within the relationship is significantly decreased. Please sit down. Is it fair to then set standards? We tell you no, because it trivializes the sexual experience of other individuals who, say, for example, aren't able to provide orgasms or don't particularly enjoy orgasms at the end of the day. Maybe they enjoy some other parts of sex. But at the end of the day, it also sets unfair expectations on individuals, where individuals are forced to opt into alternate ways in which they can try to reach orgasms, even if it doesn't come, or even if it doesn't benefit them at the end of the day. Before I move on to my next harm, yes, closing.
Even if there's no standard of sex within society, it's already biologically innate in couples who want to reach orgasm. Why is that so harmful?
No, we tell you that is exactly the sort of assumption that is harmful from closing opposition, to say that every couple out there wants to reach orgasm. Because some individual, perhaps even if they want to, they can't, but some individuals don't necessarily like orgasm. You have individuals who have sexual relationships, experience orgasm, but still come out of those sexual experiences feeling frustrated, because at the end of the day, they have this sense of meaninglessness about sex, because if it's all just about orgasms, if it's not about much more than what they could feel, then we think that's particularly harmful. But then again, what happens at the end of the day when it comes to the question? We think that this becomes a question of a direct clash between pursuit of orgasms versus self-worth / relationship ideals or whatever. Because the very fact that Terence brought up examples in debates, when he related debate and said things like, oh, in debate at the end of the day, it's always the need to want to be better. But even in debates, we recognize that there are certain individuals who at the end of the day struggle to break the glass ceiling that makes them exceptional debaters. Do we fault them for doing so? No. We tell them that debating isn't only about winning a tournament. Debating is also about exploring your ideas. It's also about growing an understanding of yourself. Similarly, in sex, it's not only about attaining orgasms at the end of the day. Fine. We understand that orgasms may be beneficial, maybe a fantastic experience for some, but are we willing to push forward the narrative of orgasms at the expense of some individuals suffering from a degradation of self-worth? We think that we prioritize self-worth more, we prioritize the ability to self-actualize far more than a fake standard that they're trying to propagate from side opposition. For all those reasons, we're incredibly proud to propose.
Thank you very much. The final speaker of the debate, I'd like to invite opposition. Later, after your speech, just press stop.
Oh, correct. My debate coach once told me that progress is a conscious effort, and I think it's also applicable when it comes to sex. Why so? Because for you to for you to have a good sex, therefore you need an ultimate goal. You need to have a presence of mind. You need to know what you want from that sex, so that you know how to improve your performance at what point you are right now and how well you are performing right now, and that is good for you to satisfy your partner. That is why we believe that on our side we need to have an ultimate goal in when it comes to sex. That is to say, we want them to attain orgasm, but that doesn't mean that it is the only factor that can contribute to good sex. We've told you it's a primary factor that works universally and almost generally to everyone, but that doesn't mean other factors will be under our paradigm. But before I move on to my rebuttal, first thing first, I'm going to talk about the biological part of orgasm. They argue on all Ali's points. They said that orgasm is something that they can pick and choose. On our side, we believe that even if society doesn't want to impose orgasm as the ultimate goal of sex, the individual would strive for orgasm anyways. It's something innate. It's something biological. Biological here means it is a bodily response triggered by the brain. So it means that it's usually not something that you can control. Even if you don't want to have orgasm, usually you would have it anyway. And secondly, if you feel that there are other factors, for instance, intimacy or cuddling or whatever that you do during sex can actually give you satisfaction, then that's fine. But the thing is, we're talking about something really natural in yourself, that is to say, orgasm. And that is why we believe that on our side, all the other factors that contribute to the pleasure in sex will usually materialize in the form of orgasm, because that's how our body works, and you cannot deny that. Hold on. Let's talk about closing off. First, they want to break stereotype and expectation in sex, because they say that sex, these kind of stereotypes and expectations are harmful. We say no, stereotype expectations in sex are not necessarily harmful, just like the stereotypes and expectations in relationship. If you cannot fulfill the expectations, then that failure is only exclusive to that individual. It doesn't harm the rest of the portion of the society who can enjoy sex from their capacity to fulfill the stereotypical expectation from their partners. We say there is something mutual between the two individuals, and we don't see it as a problem. The worst case scenario that would happen is that guy breaking up with the girl who couldn't love him enough just because he cannot attain orgasm in the bedroom, and go for another girl who can love him beyond whatever he does in the bedroom. And we see that's not even harmful. And secondly, they say racial stereotype, it creates racial stereotypes. My response, we say that racial or sexual stereotype, whatever it is, exists even without orgasm being the primary indicator for you to have good sex. For instance, if that guy likes a girl with big boobs, probably that guy would still want to pursue Caucasian or Western women because they have big boobs. It doesn't mean that he wants to achieve orgasm because of the big boobs. It's all contingent on the preferences of that particular person. It has nothing to do with orgasm at the first place. Sit down, guys. Hold on. So on to the second points they talk about, second issue they talk about, freedom of choice, whether or not you want to have orgasm. They claim that on our side we're imposing choice on their, imposing orgasm on the particular on the individual. So we acknowledge under our paradigm that there are other factors that can contribute to good sex, but those factors are the ones, like Ellie has highlighted just now, the ones that usually induce orgasm at the first place. If the couple think that orgasm is not the ultimate goal, then that's fine. But the problem arises if one of them wants orgasm to be the ultimate goal, and because of their preferences. And we say that as a tolerant partner, we don't see any harm for you to fulfill that, because that's how relationship works. It have to be mutual. You have to give commitment. There's a trade-off at the first place. So we don't think it's a form of harm. Sit down. And then they talk about the issue on suppressing natural curiosity. On our side, we believe that it works the other way around. Because we have orgasm, because we have ultimate goal in sex, it sort of like motivate people to figure out more kinky or creative ways in attaining orgasm. If you do not have a guideline at all, or what do we call that, or yardstick in sex, then you wouldn't know whether you're doing well in sex. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't want to explore new things because there's no ultimate goal at the first place. So especially Ali has highlighted just now all the psychological and health benefits of orgasm at the first place. This will motivate people even more to achieve orgasm. The people who initially don't see orgasm as the ultimate goal will try to achieve orgasm because they can, because they find it good for themselves, and we don't see it as a harmful. Onto the final issues onto the site opening government, they talk about how setting out attainment of orgasm as an indicator is. They talk about how sex is highly subjective. They talk about how women will create unnecessary pressure on the women. We say that orgasm is the materialization of pleasure, right? So we don't see why women and men have to be embarrassed in expressing their pleasure. Under our paradigm, the women and men will not be embarrassed in expressing their pleasure because they see that as an ultimate goal in sex. So we think that it is something healthy. So we break the stereotype of not having orgasm because we are embarrassed of each other. And secondly, they talk about how this will jeopardize relationship between women and men even more. We say that's not true. When you materialize pleasure in bedroom instead of holding it in, it will make your partner realize that you are happy having sex with them. And secondly, you can create, because sex is like a set of skills, that's what Ellie told me. So we need a standard for improvement. So when you have an ultimate goal, you can discuss about it after you have sex, like what to improve, how to make how to have better sex after this, because there's guideline, because there's ultimate goal in having sex. And because of all these reasons, we believe that we shall take it. Because of all these reasons, like what Ellie have told you, how it because all the other factors that contribute to good sex, is materializing of orgasm, how orgasm facilitates special bonding between human beings, and because of practical benefits of orgasm itself, we believe that we take this debate. Thank you.
All right, everyone, go back.